Hi, my name's Grace. I work as an equity ambassador in Multicultural Center, Rock Creek. My pronouns is she, her, hers. Multicultural Center is inviting two guests from the Office of International Student Services to answer some of our questions. At first, probably we can introduce ourselves, maybe.
Hi, my name is Lily Vasquez, she, her, ella pronouns, and I work at the Multicultural Center as a Multicultural Center Administrator, and I work at ASPCC as the Director of Legislative Affairs.
I am Tiff Hayes. I'm the International Student Life Coordinator. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I've been at PCC for about 5 years now.
I'm Allison, Director of International Student Services, she, her pronouns, and I have been with PCC for about 3.5 years now.
Wow, okay, perfect. So we are really happy to have both of you here as our speakers today. Thank you for setting aside some of your time. I know you guys must have really busy schedules. Okay, without further ado, let's start. Okay, so how has Office of International Student Services adapted to the situations to be more accessible to international students at PCC?
So since PCC has gone fully remote for spring and summer for sure, and most likely fall, Office of International Student Services has shifted to offer a lot online so that we're still accessible by international students and staff and faculty too, so anybody can reach us. We have set up a virtual front desk, so it's very similar to like if you would come into our office. You jump into a Zoom room and you see a face of one of our office assistants and you can ask your question. It's really great. You know, you can always email, but it's nice sometimes to see a face. So we have that, and that's 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then our international student advisors are offering online appointments as well. So they're continuing to see all of our international students online through Zoom or through Google Meet. And they've loved being able to do that. And I think students really like that option too, because then you can just jump in and you're there and you still get to see your advisor. We have shifted our usual in-person talk time cafes, which are our English conversation groups every week. Those are now all being done online. So that's 4 times a week where students can jump on any of the Zoom calls and chat and talk about all sorts of things. They play games. It's a really good time just to connect. What else? We've been offering different sorts of events. We did 4 different resume workshops in the last month and a half in collaboration with Career Services. And then we are doing yesterday there was a recycle event that we partnered with Southeast ASPCC on. And coming up in a couple of weeks, we're also doing a mental health awareness workshop, and that's partnering with counseling services. So we're trying to still be very active and available and accessible for not only international students, but staff and faculty and non-international students for services and resources and connection.
Yeah. And I would just add, so yeah, Tiff covered all the main things. And I was just thinking, one other thing is that we're doing this week and next week is something that we're calling OISS Outreach, where we've sent out via the newsletter an update about this, where our front desk staff, so Helen Wu and Kenya Royton and Alegria, I can't remember her last name right now. Mateus, there we go. They are calling every single international student that is a PCC international student, whether they are here in the US or if they have gone home, as long as they are still our students, we're giving them a call. And it's kind of it's not a check-in like what the advisors do, but it's kind of like that. It is really just doing an outreach to see how folks are doing looking at, do you know about all the resources that we have? How are things going with your classes? How are things going with, with how you're feeling these days? Are you missing other students? Can we help point you toward activities and also other resources? Financial questions as well. So it's a way that we are not just waiting for the questions to come to us, but reaching out to the students.
That sounds super interesting. So as we know, PCC international students come from all around the world, right? We have students from many different Asian countries with different backgrounds and cultures. Due to this outbreak, xenophobia is prone to occur, and international students are at higher risk of experiencing it in the United States. This has led many of us to feel anxious and unsafe. So what kind of support does PCC offer to help students deal with these issues? Or are there any tips on how to deal with it if they're experiencing it?
Yeah, and that is, I can really say that is so unfortunate, and the result, of lack of understanding of, reality, so to say, and the facts of the world, to look at groups of people in a new negative light because of the coronavirus. And it's very unfortunate that that does happen. When it does, PCC was very early. One of the first reactions of our upper administration was to make sure that we put out a statement that we do not condone or tolerate, we are completely against any sort of xenophobic reactions to what is going on. And that can be found on the pcc.edu/coronavirus webpage. It's right there on the very front. There's also a link there to report an incident. So if something happens to you, whether it's shopping or at the college, and you want to, reach out to someone to get support on that, you can use that link there. Anyone can use it, whether you're an F1 international student from an Asian country or anyone else. If you're an American citizen who has experienced something like that too. Also, I would say that, we always want the Office of International Student Services to be a first point of contact for international students if they're having questions about anything. And we hope that international students can look to their advisors, their international student advisors, as kind of coaches or folks who can help you know where to get more assistance. Even if they're not responsible for that particular thing, they can help you find out, what can I do? Each incident of xenophobic attack could be very different. It could go from a comment to an actual physical experience. And that then might really involve different things, right? What has happened. So it's hard to say, just in general, this is the answer, but the answer is really to get your own answer. And that I would say always start as the first step, to reach out to our international student advisors. And as Tiff mentioned, they are available they have pretty open appointments that then can just be online or phone call. Even if you don't want to have to always be on camera, there's still just a phone call is also available. So I would say that those are the main things. And then another thing that we do in the Office of International Student Services, and I've got to say this is really a lot through Tiff and her team of international peer leaders, as well as international student ambassadors like you, Grace, is to be there and help other students and people in our community become more aware of our international students, and not to stereotype or to think of things in a very limited way, but get to know real people from all over the world. And when you get to know real people, you get to know complex humans that you can't just put a stamp on. And so that's, I think, a great work that Tiff and the IPLs and the ISAs do.
I think one other thing is that both our international student advisors and really everybody who works in our office, including our student leaders, know how to refer a student to counseling services as well. So if anybody is, once you get past the initial part of reporting it, we're also making sure that we're connecting any students who are dealing with anything like that to counseling services, because that, in addition to all of the other things that we're dealing with right now, things are piling up, and it's good to just talk and talk to somebody who is trained to help process. So we definitely lean on our counseling services colleagues a lot, and they're wonderful, and hopefully helping students to work through any issues that they're dealing with like that.
And I don't know if I should add it here, but on that note, we have the counselors at PCC. And they were also very quickly, they moved to a remote to make sure that there was no break if students were seeing them already, or if new students needed to see counselors. They made that switch to remote services very quickly. And I think they've put quite a few things out through email and social media to let students know how to contact them. But I would also say something that is unique for our F1 international students is that all F1 international students are required to have Pacific Source health insurance. And Pacific Source Health Insurance does offer teledoc mental health services as part of your plan. So, and they really encourage students to not wait until things have gotten too bad. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling pressure, if you're feeling stressed out by this, that's a time to start talking with someone. Not when you don't have any more words anymore, right? just talk as early as possible. So that's part of Pacific Source Health Insurance. It's part of what's included in that. And it's all, they've got that through the teledoc. So even in this time of coronavirus, where we don't want to necessarily be going out too much, you can do that from your home. And some students may be concerned about going and talking with someone at PCC. They shouldn't, because no one will know. It's a private conversation that you have with your PCC counselor. But if they feel, no, I'm not so sure about doing that, then they definitely can get someone who's not associated with PCC at all. PCC will have no record ever that you talked with this healthcare professional. That is completely confidential information, and they can talk with folks. So if they're hesitating at all, the Pacific Source is a good place to go to for that.
Oh, wow. Now I know.
Yay!
Yay. Oh, wow. That's so cool. I don't really know that we have like teledoc. Probably I should read more.
And our international peer leader who's leading the mental health awareness workshop, she'll also be talking about the options that Pacific Source offers as well.
So I think one of the biggest things that I have seen is that, a lot of the resource centers are collaborating with counseling services. And I think one of the biggest concerns that I've heard when, students are sometimes a little scared to go to counseling services is wondering if the counselors are, culturally competent. And, sometimes it's hard to understand where a student is coming from if you're not from that culture. So I think that's one of, I guess my question is, how do you talk to a student that, is a little scared? What tips do you give those who are in search of a counselor, and not, try not to get discouraged from everything going on, because, it's hard opening up, and especially if they're already going through a lot, this could be one of those things that could be really good for them, or it could, be adding more stress and anxiety to them. So I think that's my biggest concern when it comes to that kind of topic. So any more tips?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have, there are some services that offer multilingual and, multilingual health professionals with not just, I happen to speak that language, but I'm not from that culture, but actually I speak the language because I'm from that culture. Those are two different things. We don't have that as a quick and easy resource. I do know that our counselors here at PCC, most of them have been with PCC for quite a few years. And they have had a lot of experience talking with students from different cultures. I know that if they run into a linguistic issue, they would look for the outreach that is possible, not only through our office, but through PCC. That does become more difficult if you have to involve another person to do translation and so on. With the Pacific Source, I would have to look again, but I know that in Pacific Source, when you're looking for a healthcare provider, there's a platform there where you can search by different things. So if you need a specialist for your stomach, you can look for an internist. And just look for doctors who focus on that. If it's mental health, you can look for doctors who are just focused on mental health. And then there's also the option to look by language there. So probably not all languages are covered, but some languages might be covered there. And there might also be the connection. So a student could do a little bit of research there looking for a doctor who is going to be the right subject area, but possibly also the language, possibly also the culture. Because we do have here in Portland a lot of physicians who are from all over the world who have come to Portland. So we do have multicultural doctors in the area. So that's one way I would suggest for students to look. And if they need help with how to use that Pacific Source website to find doctors, then again, I would say to go to our virtual front desk, because our office assistants, they know that website pretty well. And they know about all the different drop-down options to try to identify some doctors that might work out for them. And then, you still have to give a call and double check on things and make an appointment, but that might be a resource for them.
Okay. Thank you.
And part of our workshop, our mental health awareness workshop that will happen later this month, we'll be talking about culture and the differences in how mental health is seen in different cultures, because like you said, Suli, it's varied. It's, some people, some cultures don't talk about it at all. They really avoid it. And some cultures talk a lot more about it, and seeing a counselor, talking to a therapist is okay and isn't hidden behind a door or anything. So that will be part of the workshop that we're doing. And it's something that I talk about with my student leaders too when we do training before the school year starts, so that when they are leading activities or working at orientation or reaching out to our students throughout the year, they know not what to listen for, but they know when to say, hey, have you thought about talking to a counselor? Have you thought about, did you know that PCC offers counseling services? And, without getting too much into whatever their issue is, just saying, this is the resource that's available. Because I think a lot of our students don't know, or maybe don't understand what counseling is. And so that's something that that I try to train our student leaders on, our international student leaders on, to make sure that they know what it is, why they might suggest somebody look into it, or like how to bring it up that isn't seen like someone is, you know, asking too many personal questions, or like, you know, so yeah.
And maybe another factor is resources, financial resources. So I think, you know, there's the cultural, there is the understanding of what it is and what is not. There's also the privacy part, which I kind of mentioned before, about who will know and who will not know, and is this going on my record? Will my parents find out? Or, you know, all these kinds of things that can really go through your head, because it is very private, right? But then there's also the financial, and the PCC counselors, I believe it is still 8 sessions. You can have 8 sessions with the PCC counselors, and that is completely free. There's no copay or anything like that. And often those 8 sessions can be all you need. Maybe you only need 2, maybe you need less. If the counselor identifies that, you know what, it would be a really good idea for you to continue talking with someone like once a month, just keep following up, or maybe then they can refer you and help you try to find a physician that can help you in the community. And that may be where you go back to the Pacific Source site there. So if your first thing is, oh, I don't want to do a copay, I don't want to do any of that with insurance, then the very best place to start is the PCC counseling.
Thank you so much, both of you, for that.
Yeah.
Let's continue with our next questions. So I know PCC does not offer any housings for international students or any students, right? But due to these unpredictable situations, anything could happen. For example, some international students, they could not be able to pay the rent. How can Office of International Student Services help them with that?
That's a really good question, Grace. I know Allison will want to talk about this, but I just wanted to mention first that the OISS outreach that we're doing right now, that our office assistants are calling all of our international students, one of the questions, maybe not questions that they're asking, but one of the things they're listening for is if someone says, I'm having trouble with housing, or I'm having financial trouble, and then they have resources to direct the students to. So we know that some international students are struggling with that, and that's part of the reason why we're doing this outreach, to see how we can help, how we can support, and who is, you know, who's struggling with what right now, because there's so much going on, and everybody's struggling with something. So we are trying to connect people with different resources through PCC and the community, as far as those are concerned, and food insecurity and all of those things too. So it is something that we are listening for, looking for, and connecting students to resources.
Yeah. And I would say, again, one of the first places, the Office of International Student Services does, you know, unfortunately, we do not have apartments that we can put people in. I think it would be a wonderful idea, but we don't have that. But I always say, you know, talk to your international student advisor, because they don't have the answer for you directly, but they can direct you to resources that you might find. Now, with apartments, with living situations, right now during COVID, where we're all supposed to be staying home and not mixing and mingling quite as much, that becomes even more difficult, right? Because previously, if something happened with your apartment, or maybe you're doing, you know, 3 or 4 students are living in one apartment, and one decides, oh, those guys party too much, I'm gonna go for a quiet apartment somewhere else. You just kind of, you reach out, you look for a friend who, you know, oh, they've got an extra room, I'm gonna move in there. But right now, we have to be careful about, you know, transferring germs, so to say, from one place to another. So that exacerbates the problem. I do know that some things have been put into place in Oregon that you are not supposed to be evicted if you have run into financial difficulties because of the coronavirus. I am not in any way, I know no legal background of this at all, so I cannot give advice. I just know that there might be a possibility to talk with an attorney if you are being evicted. There might be, I would suggest that a student would talk with an attorney about whether they have rights or not in that case. And in that case, international students are no different than anyone else. If you have a lease, you have a lease. That you don't fall into a different category because you're an international student. So again, we can't give that kind of legal advice of what to do in that situation, but I would always say seek legal assistance. Another thing that, and I really know this might be like a last resort for international students and they really don't want to, and I can totally understand, and I can really understand, I would prefer that they don't have to take this measure, but just so international students understand, they can right now, never has this happened before, but right now you can maintain your F1 visa status even if you leave the country and go home. So if you are taking your classes, if you are, you need to talk to your international student advisor about it, but there is a way that you could go home, continue with your classes, take the online classes, take the remote classes. And yes, that might mean sometimes you have to get up at 2 a.m. because of the time zone difference, but it's possible to keep your F1 status and be at home, which could save you and your family some money, right? And help you, like, okay, things became too difficult to afford the living and the food and everything in Portland. So I'm going to go home for a while. And then when things open back up, I'm going to come back again. And I will keep my visa status and I will keep my active status the whole time. And like I said, I'm not trying to encourage everyone to leave. I want everyone to stay because we might be able to open up sooner than we think. We don't know at this moment. But I just want students to not be afraid, because before it was really, if you leave, you can't keep your status active and not be here. So now that is something that CVIP, the Department of, and through the Department of Homeland Security has let us work with students in that way. So if you really feel like, look, I know where my finances are right now, things have happened back home, finances with my family, we can't afford me to live here anymore, talk with your international student advisor right away. We can make arrangements and help you keep your status and keep your classes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering that questions.
Yeah.
Sully, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a clarification question. I was once told that unfortunately international students are limited to online classes. With this whole situation, would that still be considered online classes, even?
Right. So that, yeah, that all changed, and that's good that you point that out. So what we've been doing is, as the government has given us new direction, new guidance because of this special situation, we've been emailing all F1 international students. I hope you received those emails, Grace. And we've posted those emails, or the content of those emails, onto our webpage. So that's something that I want to make sure when we're done with this recording that I can give you the website address, but it's pcc.edu/international-students. And when you go to that main page, right now, right at the front, you'll see our special box related to special arrangements due to coronavirus or COVID. And the first thing you'll see is the virtual front desk that Tiff mentioned. And then below that, one of the first things you'll see is an update for international students about how to maintain their status. And that is one of the main points, is that previously international students could only take one, the basic rule was one online class per term. Well, now all the classes are online, so they can't just take one. So the government has allowed us to have students, they can take as many online classes or remote, either way, remote or online. That's the synchronous or asynchronous classes. They can take as many as they want. And still meet the minimum requirements, right? They're still expected to do 12 credits unless they get permission to take less than 12 credits. And that actually has been an issue. Some programs are not being offered during spring, right? Aviation maintenance technology, they are closed or canceled for spring. So those students are allowed to stay in status, even though it's not their vacation term, even though they can't take classes. So on our website, it kind of points it out for each student kind of category, if this applies to you, if this applies to you, if this applies to you. And of course, if students have any questions about the number of credits they need to take, whether they're going to stay in the US or go home, they always need to talk with their advisor about that. Because we also, part of our regulations is that the government requires that we know where every student is living. So that kind of goes back to the housing question. If a student needs to move from their current apartment to live with someone else right now during COVID, they have to also tell their advisor within 10 days. That's part of the regulations. If you decide to go home, we also need to know that you've gone home, and we need to put that in our database and keep that as our records. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a really great question, Suli. I just wanted to say something related to that, because it's been so interesting to see international students' reactions to taking online classes. Some students are loving it, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I'm so glad I get to take all of these classes online, and I could be like anywhere and doing this, even though I'm only at home. And then some students are like, this is so difficult. I do not want to be taking online classes. I wish we could be in person, and I'm so happy that we're only allowed to take one class online usually. So it's been kind of funny and interesting to see the difference, because there are definitely students on there are a lot of students here in the middle, but there are definitely students here that are like, yes, this is amazing, I love it so much, and some students that are like, this is terrible. So it's kind of all over the board, and I'm sure it's the same for domestic students, but never before have our international students had the opportunity to do them all online. So right. It's another one of those, this is a first.
Yeah, and for some international students, where some of the programs have quite a few online classes that are now, there's no in-person option. It's just online for these, not for the whole program, but just for really important classes that you have to take. Then international students previously have had to space them out. Okay, I'll take that one in the fall, and then I'll take one more in the winter and one more in the spring. And so for students who are in those programs, they're like, wow, great, I'm taking them all right now. Yeah. Getting them out of the way. So yeah, and if students are if you're hearing, or if anyone who listens to this is having difficulties with the technology, or we also on the PCC COVID, or what is it called, COVID or coronavirus? I think it's pcc.edu coronavirus.
And then the email, I think, is COVID questions.
Yeah, COVID questions. Let me look here really quickly. So that's the email, or that's the URL, and then it's covidquestions@pcc.edu. But on that web page, there are also the links to getting more resources, online tutoring. There's IT and tech resources and tutoring for students who are still kind of struggling with the online format. Oh, and there are also, we've had actually one of our international student leaders recently started the term quite strong. Okay, I've got my laptop, I'm gonna do this, I got it. And then her laptop died or started not to be able to run a certain program that she needed for her class. So she applied through the PCC Emergency Technology grant and got a laptop sent to her house. So she's like, yes, my term is saved. So
she's so happy. She can actually, and it's an accounting class that she has been trying to take, and QuickBooks wasn't working, and it's essential for that class. You can't not have it. And she spent hours talking to IT and talking to her instructor and working with the creators of QuickBooks and trying to figure it out, and wasn't getting anywhere. So, oh yeah, that was very stressful. She was, every week when I checked in on her, she was like, haven't made any progress. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. So when students are having these, issues with the technology and the online format, really asking for help. I can't guarantee every person a new laptop. I can't guarantee that, but PCC does have some resources, and they really are trying to make sure that students who need technology are being helped. And that's not within our office. That's part of what PCC is doing right now. So
thank you. Perfect. Thank you for that. We do have another question about similar to, we talked about grants, and is there other grants for international students to have access to? Because I know we have the emergency grant, but I'm wondering if there are other type of resources that way, because you mentioned the technology grant. Are there any other stuff?
Right now we have just the PCC emergency grant, which is not just for technology. There's one where you can ask about technology, and then there's a general grant that is open for international students. I don't get a report on on which international students were awarded the grant, but I do know that several have been awarded the grant. So there's no restriction for international students on that. You all have probably heard about the CARES funding that is coming to our college, and it's coming to all colleges and universities, and each college and university is being asked to work out a system for distributing the funds that can be provided to students. Unfortunately, we had first thought that some of those funds might be able to be dispersed to DACA or Dreamer students as well as international students, and it turns out that additional regulations were added to that so that it is not possible for international students or Dreamers. And what the college is doing right now, and I don't have all the details, but what our upper administration is looking at is, well, if Dreamers and international students cannot be included in that, how can we make sure that the other funds that we do have through the foundation and any other sources that we might identify, how can we make sure that international students and Dreamers will have access to those? Right? So that is something that is on the mind of President Mitsui and our vice presidents. I've talked with our vice president over international is Heather Lang. And so we've had discussions about that, and that is on their mind, and they are working out, how this is all going to play out. So I don't have the details right now on that, but I do know that is, their attention is on this. So I hope that there will be additional funding, or that it will be a little more clear about how that will be distributed.
Thank you. Back to you, Grace.
Okay. PCC also have like ESOL programs too, right? So how have the enrollment process and class format changed due to these situations?
Well, our ESOL department has had to quickly change pretty much everything about all of their classes because they've never had online classes before. And a big reason for that is because international students are limited in online classes, right? So it's neither of us work in the ESOL department, so we can't say specifically what they have done to switch over their classes and things, but we do know that they have undergone a lot of change and transition since moving to remote classes, and maybe more so than other instructors who may have taught online before, because I'm not sure if any of them had taught online before. Maybe they had, but so I know it's been a learning process for them, and in addition to a learning process for a lot of our ESOL students. And I know that some of them are struggling, and we are providing as much support as we possibly can to students who are struggling. And again, that's another reason why we're doing these phone calls. This OISS outreach is to check, how are your classes going? Are you having any trouble? Are you struggling? What sort of resources can we refer you to? So I just wanted to mention that first, that
Yeah.
It has been, as you can imagine, it's been a stressful and complicated process.
And part of the resources, because as Tiff said, we are not part of the ESOL departments, but we work closely with them. And one of the things that we have done is to make sure that lower level ESOL students, because if online is difficult for folks who actually can read all of the things that you're supposed to do to get online, imagine how difficult it is if every little button you're translating it or holding your phone up for Google Translate, like, what do I do now? Where do I click? What is this? So we've also offered translation services for the lower level students, especially the lower level new students that came to us in spring. We had 45 new students in spring, and about half of them were ESOL students. And it was interesting because we had planned our new student orientation for in person, but just that week it was no more in person, just that very week of new student orientation. So 45 students who were, most of them new to the US, some of them were transfer students from another institution, but many of them had just arrived in the US, and it became everything moved to remote. So, but they were wonderful, and they got onto Zoom meetings very first day, Monday. We sent everyone a Zoom link. Everybody logged in, and we could see everyone from everywhere and get to know them. They did online testing through Duolingo instead of the other ESOL testing. That worked out pretty well. And then, the students who were really much lower in the level, we were able to help them even into the first weeks of the term to help them get started in their classes. And Tiff and the IPLs offered the first couple weeks, especially, like extra sessions of just, hey, how are things going, Zoom meetings? And we did notice that a couple of the same students showed up to every single one because they were like, I need a little more help with this. And so that was great because we were just there. And it was kind of us trying to show, yes, we don't have an office for you to come into right now, but we're here, and we're not just here by email. Like, you can see our faces, and we can show you the screen, and we can flip things. So again, my hat really goes off to Tiff and the international peer leaders, who they became Zoom professionals like overnight, and were helping students. And Because being able to see a friendly face, even if it is virtually, as opposed to just here's an email about your next steps, that makes really so much of a difference. And so yeah, so that's just another service that we're offering, and we can continue to offer that. We have so many international student leaders and international students who work for us part-time or just as needed, and they love the hours and they love to help other students. So if you're ever having translation difficulties and we have someone who speaks your language, you know, let us know.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that OISS has tried so many ways to stay connected with other international students. I'm really grateful for that. So some students asked about the stimulus check. For the stimulus checks, can international students receive them? If they do receive them by accident, what are the things they should do? Who can they go to for help?
There's a really good place that they can start at, and that is on the on our website. We have a tax information page that's linked there under resources. So that it doesn't have specific information about the stimulus check, but it does have resources, a link to the IRS website, and a couple of other options to look at. When it comes to taxes, Grace will just be honest with you, we cannot give tax advice, and so we really have to be so careful about what we say when it comes to income tax. So that is my like top tip, is to look at our website, because there are some links there that can lead you to some resources that can give tax advice. And that is not us, but we provide you with the resources.
Yeah. Well put, Tiff. I would just add that because this question has come up, then I was kind of looking at, kind of snooping around on Google, like, what is this?
Same.
So because taxes, and if you fall into this bracket or this bracket, so with the CARES funding, the reason, the distinction for getting CARES funding through the college is they have made the stipulation that a student must be Title IV eligible. Okay, and if I'm not going to go into what Title IV means, but so that's the distinction there. But the stimulus checks have to do with your tax status. So we can't say that all F1 students are in this tax status or this tax status. There's two big groups, and one is you're a resident and the other one is you're a non-resident. But that's not about your citizenship. That's not about your visa status. That's about how long you've been in the country and how much if you've been paying taxes and how you file taxes, and lots of different factors. So even if you came to our office, even if you talked with an international student advisor, even if you went to our front desk open, hours, virtual front desk, you would get the same answer: is we don't know. We cannot know what your tax status is. You have to find that out. If you don't know, we will send you to our webpage that has some places that you can go where people who can give tax advice will help you. If it turns out that you received the check and you shouldn't have received the check, then you should not cash the check or spend it. There's a way to send it back, right? You can just send it back and make sure it doesn't get cashed in your name. But I can't tell you whether you fall into that category or that category, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So Sully, do you have any other questions?
I do not at the moment, actually. That was one of the biggest questions that I did have about the stimulus check, because I had also heard about questions about that and I didn't know what to answer. So I'm thankful for your response to that.
Yeah, if you continue to get that question, and what I have been saying too is I can't tell you for sure if you should or shouldn't have received it, but if you do receive it, it's a good idea to do some research and to look at our tax page, and I think you'll be able to discover if you should have received it or not. I'm sorry, we can't give more. I know one of those subjects that like is so frustrating because American citizens who have lived here their entire lives don't understand taxes. And so when we're talking about them for someone who is an international student and really has no clue, I wish I could give more information, but even if I don't know it, because nobody really understands taxes. And even if I did, every single person's situation is so different that you know, giving a blanket yes or no is really like not a good idea for anybody. So.
Perfect. Thank you for the information. So, do you all have any updates about the fall terms? Will it be done remotely or back to normal, face-to-face?
Well, I know we all wish it would be back to normal. I can't wait for back to normal. Although, you know, Portland is famous for keeping it weird. So we don't want to be too normal, right? But we would like it to be back to normal. We don't know. The last message that went out from our president's cabinet was that we are planning for continued remote online instruction as well as remote services, with the kind of disclaimer that if the kind of our college is working with the governor's office and with the HEC, which is the higher education
Coordinating Council.
Thank you. Say it again.
Higher Education Coordinating Council.
Thank you very much. So working with both of those entities to try to figure out what is the best path for PCC to reopen. Right now, just to be on the safe side, they have put out that we definitely will be totally online and remote for summer. And that for fall, we will be probably online and remote. There are some exceptions that are being made for some career technical programs, mostly related to healthcare, because of course right now it would be great if more students are moving forward in their healthcare programs, able to get into the healthcare field. We need every healthcare professional we can get at the moment to help us out in this situation. But that we just have to keep waiting for updates from our president, and those are coming out by email, but also on our web pages. Just the PCC front pages are often got like the newest update, but also the coronavirus pages that we have. So students, if you're ever in doubt, like, oh, I think I missed an email somewhere, it went to my spam folder, I don't know, you can always go to the website and find the latest information there.
We also link to that, the main PCC coronavirus page from our office website too. So if the students are having trouble finding things or anything, our website will have that. And we also try to include as much as possible. We've been including the same little section of coronavirus COVID resources and information in our newsletter every week. So that also is a good resource to watch.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today and, you know, answering our questions that were brought to us by students. You know, those are all the questions we have as of now. And, you know, again, thank you so much. This will be going out to students, and we will be putting the links that you all have mentioned and reminding them that as things are changing, you know, new information comes out frequently. So we'll be putting that as well. And, you know, thank you again so much for your time and for being here.
Thank you both so much. This is wonderful. And yeah, the main thing is come to us. We are here to help you. That is our sole purpose of our existence is we are here for international students. So if you email and don't get an answer, you can let me know. If you're trying to make an appointment and you can't get an appointment, you can let me know, right? And my email address is allison.blizzard@pcc.edu. And, but that is the reason we are here, is to help international students as much as possible. And being able to talk with you all today and to share some of the information, that is great for us to be able to do that outreach. So thank you both very much for putting all of this together.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you so much for doing this. I've done a couple of things like this since all of this started, and it's been so great because we want to provide information, we want to provide resources, we want to support our international students. And it's also good for everybody else, domestic students, staff, faculty, to know this information too, because then they are also able to help our international students know what's going on and what's special about everything that's happening with COVID and coronavirus for international students. So this is really great. Thank you, Grace and Suli, both. This has been super fun and like really good to see your faces after not seeing anyone for so long. So yeah, great job and good questions too.
Yeah,
definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.